My wife started an affair with her boss, and now she's claiming I'm illegally selling our family home to fund her new life, all while secretly draining our bank accounts of $200, $0 to hide her betrayal. I never thought I'd be the guy to find out my wife was cheating on me in the most brutal way possible. Honestly, the whole thing felt like a bad movie I couldn't escape from. It started with little things: her phone ringing late at night, her sudden obsession with her phone, hiding her conversations like she was up to something. I always suspected she was hiding something, but I never wanted to face it. I kept telling myself she was stressed or just busy with work. That was until I found out the truth in the worst way possible. Her name is, and mine is, Jake. We've been married for about 8 years now. I thought we had a good life, stable, comfortable, with a nice house in the suburbs, decent jobs, 2 kids who are the light of our lives. But I guess I was blind. I never saw the signs that she was slipping away from me. She was always dismissive, snapping at me over petty things, spending hours on her phone, and suddenly she was acting secretive about her emails and texts. I brushed it off at first. I believed her when she said she was just stressed at work, that she was busy climbing the corporate ladder, and that I shouldn't worry. Then one day I came home earlier than usual. I wanted to surprise her with dinner. I opened the door and the house was dead silent. No sign of her in the living room. I went upstairs, feeling a strange sense of unease. That's when I noticed her purse on the bed, slightly open. I reached in and found her phone. I wasn't planning to look, but the screen lit up with a message from someone named Mike. It was a picture of his face, half naked, with a caption that said, "Can't wait to see you tonight. Love you, babe." My stomach dropped. I stared at it, unable to breathe for a second. I unlocked her phone, and what I saw made my blood run cold. There were dozens of messages with this Mike guy, flirty, intimate, sometimes downright explicit. She was talking about their plans to meet up this week, how much she missed his touch, how she loved the feeling of being desired. I scrolled through the messages, watching my wife betray me in her own words. The worst part: they'd been doing this for months. I found receipts of hotel bookings, pictures of her with him, even a hotel key card tucked into her purse. She was cheating on me right under my nose, and I never suspected a thing. I didn't want to believe it at first. I kept thinking maybe I was overreacting, that this was just some stupid flirtation. But the evidence was undeniable. I felt a mix of shock, anger, and heartbreak flooding through me. How could she do this? After everything we built, she was out there sneaking around, lying to my face. I wanted to confront her right then and there, but I needed to gather my thoughts. I needed to understand what this all meant for us, for our family, for my own sense of trust and dignity. The next morning, I woke up with a pounding head and a heavy weight in my chest. I knew I couldn't pretend anymore. I had to face her. I went into the living room where she was sitting on her phone, scrolling through social media like nothing had happened. I looked at her and said, "I need to talk to you, now." Her face froze, her eyes darted away for a second, then she forced a smile and said, "What's wrong, Jake?" That's when I dropped the bombshell. I told her I knew everything: the messages, the hotel receipts, the photos. Her face went pale, her lips trembled, and her eyes blazed with anger. She started lying immediately, saying it was all a mistake, that Mike was just as she was helping with a project, that it was nothing serious, just sexless flirting. She claimed I was paranoid, jealous, insecure. She told me I was imagining things, that she loved me and only me, that she'd never hurt me intentionally. But I could see through her lies. I knew she was trying to spin her way out of it to save her own ass. I felt a mixture of rage and heartbreak. How could she betray me like this? After all these years, she was out there, sneaking around, lying, cheating. I felt betrayed, humiliated, and furious at the same time. That confrontation was the start of everything falling apart. I didn't want to believe it at first, but the evidence was staring me in the face. I sat there, listening to her spin her stories, and I realized that my world was crumbling. I couldn't trust her anymore. I didn't know how to fix this, or if I even wanted to. All I knew was that I had to figure out what to do next. I was angry, yes, but I also felt a deep sadness. I loved her, I still do, but I couldn't ignore the fact that she had been unfaithful and that she was lying to my face now. The worst part: she kept insisting she was innocent, that I was overreacting, that I was just jealous and insecure. She said she was sorry, but her apology sounded hollow. I could see she was trying to manipulate me to make me doubt my own instincts. But I wasn't stupid. I knew the truth. And that truth was that my wife, the woman I trusted with my life, had been secretly sleeping with her boss, Mike, for months. And she was now trying to convince me it was all my fault. That's when I realized I couldn't stay blind anymore. I had to decide what to do, but deep down, I knew I'd never look at her the same way again. After that confrontation, everything changed. I felt like I was walking around in a fog, trying to process what I'd just uncovered. The house suddenly felt too quiet, even though it was bustling with daily life. I kept replaying her words, her lies, her fake apologies. I couldn't believe she'd been doing this behind my back for so long, sneaking around, lying, pretending everything was fine. She kept insisting it was just sex, that it didn't mean anything, but I knew better. I saw the photos, the messages, the hotel receipts. There was no way it was just sex. She was in love with him, or at least she thought she was. I started noticing more things. Small things, but enough to make me feel like I was losing my mind. Her phone started ringing constantly. She told me she was working late more often, claiming she had important meetings or client calls. But I could tell she was hiding something. The way she'd suddenly disappear into the bedroom with her phone, locking the door like she was hiding a secret. I'd catch her lying about her whereabouts, her schedule, who she was talking to. Every time I questioned her, she'd get defensive, accuse me of snooping or being paranoid. One night, I decided to follow her. I didn't want to believe she was still sneaking around, but I couldn't shake the feeling that she was. She told me she was going out with her friends, but I saw her slip her phone into her purse and leave the house after I went to bed. I followed her in my car at a distance. She drove to a fancy hotel downtown, one I'd never even been in. She went inside and I parked nearby, watching from a dark alley. I saw her go into a room with Mike. They kissed, they touched, and she looked so different, more alive, more herself. That was the moment I knew I couldn't pretend anymore. The next day I confronted her again. I told her I knew she was still seeing him, that I had proof. Her reaction was something else: anger, denial, a sort of panic I'd never seen from her before. She yelled at me, said I was crazy, that I was ruining her life. She accused me of being controlling, of not trusting her. Then she threw in the classic line, "You're just jealous because I don't want to be with a boring, insecure husband like you anymore." That was when I realized she was trying to gaslight me, to make me doubt my own feelings, my own instincts. But I wasn't going to let her do that. I knew the truth, and I was done being played for a fool. I started digging into her finances after that. I found out she drained about $200, $0 from our joint account over the last few months. Money she was secretly funneling into accounts I didn't even know existed. She'd been secretly transferring money, buying herself jewelry, designer clothes, even paying for the hotel stays with cash, so I wouldn't find out. She was trying to cover her tracks, but it was obvious she'd been planning her escape for a while. She claimed she was just saving up for a new life, but I knew better. She was planning to run away, probably with Mike, leaving me to pick up the pieces of a marriage I thought was solid. I felt sick, not just because she was cheating, but because she was so good at lying, at hiding her tracks, at pretending everything was fine. I felt betrayed, humiliated, and furious. How could she do this to me? To our family? I started to question everything: our memories, the vows we took, the life we built. All of it seemed like a lie now. I was angry at her for not only cheating, but for trying to steal from us, for planning her new life behind my back. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut every time I thought about how she'd betrayed me, especially after I'd been nothing but loyal and supportive. But I also knew I couldn't let her see how much she'd hurt me. I had to stay calm, even if inside I was burning with rage. I decided I needed to get legal advice. I couldn't let her sell the house or drain more money without me knowing. I wasn't about to let her wipe us out and run off with her lover. I started talking to a lawyer, learning what my rights were, what I could do to protect our assets, and how I could confront her without losing my mind. I knew I had to be strategic. I couldn't just lash out. That would only make things worse. Meanwhile, she kept up her lies, acting like everything was normal even as I was gathering evidence. She'd come home late, smell like perfume, and deny everything. She'd call me paranoid or insecure, but I knew better now. I saw through her. I was starting to realize that the I'd married was gone, replaced by someone else, someone selfish, manipulative, and willing to destroy what we had for her own selfish needs. It hurt more than I can put into words. I kept asking myself how I missed the signs, how I let her get away with this for so long. The trust I once had in her was shattered completely. The worst part, she kept lying even when I had proof. She'd spin stories about how she was just stressed at work, how she didn't mean for any of this to happen, that she loved me and the kids. But her words sounded hollow. I could tell she was trying to manipulate me, trying to make me doubt what I knew was the truth. Every day, I felt a little more like a stranger in my own life, trying to piece together what was real and what was just her lies. I didn't know what the future held, but I knew one thing for sure. My wife was not the woman I thought I married, and I wasn't going to let her destroy us without a fight. After a few days of obsessively going over everything, I realized I needed to take control of the situation. I couldn't just sit around and let her keep lying and draining our finances. I started pulling together all the evidence I had, screenshots of her messages, bank statements, hotel receipts, everything. I even hired a private investigator to get some eyes on her when I couldn't. It was a brutal process, but I needed to know exactly how deep she was into this mess. One night I got a call from the PI. He followed her to a different hotel downtown. She was inside with Mike again. That was the final nail in the coffin for me. Seeing her with him, knowing she was still lying to my face, that was the moment I decided I'd had enough. I couldn't keep pretending everything was okay. I had to do something drastic. I'd already lost a piece of myself to her betrayal, but I wasn't going to let her walk away with everything, including the house we built together. The next morning, I sat her down. I told her I knew everything about her affair, her secret accounts, the money she'd taken, and her plans to leave. Her face twisted with anger, but I saw the flicker of panic in her eyes. She tried to deny it all, claiming she was just talking to Mike about work, that I was overreacting. She said I was paranoid and insecure, that she loved me and only me. But I didn't buy it anymore. I told her I was done being manipulated. I said I was calling the lawyer and that I was going to protect what was ours. Her reaction was furious. She started yelling, calling me every name in the book. She accused me of destroying everything we had, of being too controlling. She said I was ruining her life, that she deserved to be happy, even if that meant cheating and stealing from us. I watched her, cold and detached, knowing that I couldn't let her continue. She was trying to spin the story to make herself look like the victim, but I knew the truth. She was the villain here. I told her she needed to leave the house, that I was filing for divorce, that I would fight for custody of the kids, and that I was going to take back control of our money. I had already contacted my lawyer and started the process. I wanted to make sure she couldn't sell the house or drain any more money. I knew she was planning to run away, but I wasn't going to let her do it without consequences. This wasn't just about the affair anymore. It was about her stealing from us in every way possible. Over the next few days, she became more and more frantic. She tried to guilt-trip me, saying I was ruining her future, that she was entitled to happiness after all she'd been through. She accused me of being a terrible husband, of not trusting her, of being possessive. But I didn't care anymore. I was too angry, too betrayed. I had every right to be. I saw her for what she truly was, a manipulative, selfish woman who'd been willing to destroy our marriage for some cheap affair and quick cash. Meanwhile, I kept pushing forward with the legal process. I wanted to get everything documented, her secret accounts, the money she'd taken, the plans she was making to leave. I also started secretly recording her when she'd lash out or try to spin her stories. I knew I had to protect myself, especially if she decided to go nuclear. The more I uncovered, the clearer it became that she was willing to burn everything down just to be with Mike and live her new life. I felt sick thinking about how far gone she was, how she'd lied to my face for so long. The most shocking thing was her attempt to claim that I was trying to sell our house illegally, to say I was planning to steal our family's home to fund her getaway. She planted the idea in her mind that I was some kind of criminal, just because I was taking steps to protect what was rightfully ours. She accused me of being greedy, of trying to keep her from her happiness. That was the point I realized she was truly lost. She'd become a master manipulator, twisting everything to fit her narrative. But deep down, I knew her game was coming to an end. As I watched her spiral, I couldn't help but feel a bittersweet mix of relief and sadness. Part of me wanted to fight to save what we had, to fix the mess, but another part knew that she'd already crossed too many lines. I didn't want to be the guy who destroyed his family, but I couldn't ignore the betrayal anymore. I had to protect my kids, my house, and myself. I couldn't let her drain us dry or run away with her lover while pretending she was the victim. I was tired of her lies, her manipulations, and her betrayal. The truth was out, and I was ready to fight for my life, for my dignity, and for whatever future I could salvage from this chaos. The days that followed felt like a whirlwind. I was busy coordinating with my lawyer, gathering every piece of evidence I could find: bank statements showing the mysterious transfers, emails where she was clearly planning her escape, even her phone records with Mike. Every document, every message painted a clearer picture of her betrayal. I also hired a financial advisor to help me understand exactly how much she'd drained and how to protect what was left. I couldn't believe she'd gone this far, almost $200, $0 siphoned from our accounts, hidden behind fake names and offshore accounts she'd set up in secret. Meanwhile, behavior grew more frantic. She started acting out, yelling at me, accusing me of trying to control her, calling me paranoid. She even started to turn the kids against me, telling them I was trying to ruin her life and that I was jealous of her happiness. I knew I had to be careful. I couldn't let her manipulate the kids or turn them against me. I kept my composure, though inside I was boiling with rage. I still loved her, but I couldn't ignore what she'd done. I was angry at myself for not seeing the signs earlier, but I was even angrier at her for destroying everything we built. One night, she came home late again, smelling like perfume and carrying a small bag. I was already waiting in the living room, my lawyer's documents spread out in front of me. She looked surprised, caught off guard. I told her I knew she was planning to leave, that I had proof of everything. Her face twisted into a sneer, trying to act innocent. She said she was just going out for a walk, that I was making things up. But I wasn't buying her act anymore. I told her I was filing for divorce, that I would fight for custody of the kids, and that I was going to take control of our assets. I told her she couldn't keep lying, stealing, and sneaking around forever. That was the night she finally snapped. She started yelling, screaming about how I was ruining her life, how I was trying to keep her from her happiness. She accused me of being a controlling, insecure husband who was jealous of her success. She said I was just trying to punish her because I was too weak to handle her independence. It was a classic gaslighting move, and I could see through it. I told her she was a liar, a cheat, and a thief, and that I wasn't going to let her destroy us anymore. I made it clear she had to leave the house, that I was calling the police if she tried to take anything else or run away with the money. She stormed out that night, but I knew she'd be back. She had no money, no plan, and her reputation was already crumbling. I was exhausted but relieved that I'd taken control of the situation. I also started to brace myself for what was coming next: her desperate attempts to manipulate, threaten, or even spin a new story to save herself. I knew she'd fight me every step of the way, but I was prepared. I had the evidence, the legal support, and a clear plan to protect my rights and the future of my kids. The most surprising thing was how quickly she flipped the narrative. Suddenly, she was claiming I was the one cheating, that I was secretly planning to sell the house illegally to fund my own affairs. She accused me of being a liar and a criminal, trying to turn everyone against me. I couldn't believe her audacity. She was the one sneaking around, draining our bank accounts and lying to my face. Yet she was now the victim. That's when I realized this wasn't just about infidelity. It was about her complete inability to accept responsibility for her actions. I kept my head, though. I knew I couldn't let her manipulate the situation or make me doubt myself. I had the evidence, the law on my side, and the truth. I also started documenting everything, every conversation, every threat, every lie. I wanted to make sure I had a solid case if she tried to take me to court or make false accusations. I'd seen her lie so convincingly before, but I was determined not to let her win this time. I'd been betrayed in the worst way, but I wasn't going to be a victim. I was going to stand my ground, protect my children, and rebuild my life from the wreckage she'd left behind. Now that I had taken the first real steps to fight back, I felt a strange mixture of relief and dread. Relief because I finally had a plan and I wasn't going to let her ruin me. Dread because I knew she wouldn't go down without a fight. I could see her desperation growing, her lies getting more desperate, more chaotic. She thought she could manipulate me, that I'd back down, but I wasn't going to give her that satisfaction. I'd learned a hard lesson. Trust is fragile and betrayal cuts deep. But I also learned that sometimes you have to fight for what's right, even if it means tearing everything apart first. Over the next couple of weeks, things escalated quickly. Attempts to spin her version of events grew more frantic, and her accusations against me became more vicious. She started calling friends, family, anyone who would listen, trying to paint herself as the wronged wife, the victim of my controlling ways. She claimed I was trying to ruin her reputation, that I was secretly trying to sell the house to fund some kind of illegal operation. Completely false, but she was good at twisting facts to fit her narrative. Meanwhile, I kept working with my lawyer, preparing for the inevitable court battle. I had all the evidence, texts, bank statements, hotel receipts, the PI reports, and I was ready to fight for custody of the kids and the house. I knew the only way to truly protect myself was to go through the legal system. I also started documenting her behavior, her late night calls, her secret meetings, her lies. I set up hidden cameras in the house, just in case she tried to do something more drastic or destructive. One day, she showed up at my workplace unexpectedly, crying and begging me not to go through with the divorce. She said she'd do anything to fix things, that she loved me and the kids. But her words felt hollow. I could see the desperation in her eyes, the guilt buried beneath her acting. I told her that love wasn't enough anymore, that her lies and betrayal had broken whatever trust we had left. I told her I was done being her fool, and that I was going to protect what was ours, by any means necessary. She stormed out, but that night she tried to contact the kids, telling them I was trying to ruin the family, that I was the bad guy. I knew she was trying to turn them against me, just like she'd tried to do with her friends. It was sickening. I sat there feeling helpless yet determined. I wanted to protect my children from her lies, but I also knew I had to be careful. She was volatile, unpredictable, and capable of doing anything to get her way. The legal process moved fast. The court scheduled a hearing to freeze her accounts and investigate her financial activities. I was nervous but confident I had everything I needed. I also filed for full custody of the kids, citing her infidelity and financial misconduct as reasons she wasn't fit to be the primary caregiver right now. I knew it was a long shot, but I had to try. I owed it to my children to make sure they were safe and protected from her manipulations. Meanwhile, behavior became more erratic. She threatened me, claiming she'd ruin me financially if I didn't back off. She started making false accusations to the police, claiming I was trying to sell her possessions illegally, that I was trying to control her. It was all a desperate attempt to derail my plans, but I stayed calm. I had everything documented, and I knew I had the law on my side. I refused to be pushed around by her lies anymore. One night, she showed up at my house unannounced, screaming and demanding I give her access to the bank accounts so she could take what's hers. I told her no, that I was done enabling her manipulations, that she had no right to drain our family's savings or destroy what we had left. That was the moment I realized she was completely out of control. She was trying to threaten and intimidate me to get her way by any means necessary, but I refused to back down. I also started reaching out to friends and family for support. I needed people to see her for who she really was, a liar, a manipulator, a thief. I wanted them to understand that I was fighting for my children, for our home, for my own sanity. It was hard, feeling so betrayed, so angry, but at least I wasn't alone. I had people who believed in me and saw through her lies. Looking back, I realize how far I've come. It's been of emotions, shock, anger, sadness, determination. I still can't believe I was like this, but I also know I can't let her win. I have to stay strong for my kids, for myself. The fight isn't over yet, but I'm prepared. I've uncovered enough to ensure she can't steal our home, drain our savings, or manipulate the court. Whatever she's trying to do now, I'll be ready. Because at the end of the day, I know the truth, and I refuse to let her destroy everything we built. The court date finally arrived, and I felt a strange mixture of relief and dread. I knew I had everything on my side, proof of her affair, the financial misconduct, and her attempts to manipulate the situation. As I sat in that courtroom, I watched her sit across from me, her face tense and angry, desperately trying to hold her composure. She kept spinning her stories, claiming I was the one cheating, that I was trying to sell the house illegally to fund some secret life of my own. The judge looked skeptical, and I could see the wheels turning in his mind. When it was my turn to speak, I laid out everything, showed the evidence of her affair, the bank transfers, the hotel receipts, the photos from the pie. I explained how she had drained our savings, how she'd been planning her escape for months, and how her lies had shattered our marriage. I told the court about her manipulations, her threats, and her reckless behavior. I made it clear that I was fighting not just for the house, but for the safety and well-being of my children. I wanted them to grow up in a stable environment, not one filled with lies and betrayal. The judge listened carefully, and after a long deliberation, he made his ruling. He ordered her to return the stolen money, to cease all attempts to sell or transfer the house without my consent, and to pay child support and custody arrangements that favored stability. The court also issued a restraining order preventing her from making any further threats or attempts to sabotage my relationship with the kids. I felt a weight lift off my shoulders, knowing I had fought for what was right and that the legal system was on my side. In the aftermath, this world crumbled even further. She tried to appeal, to manipulate the court, but her credibility was shot. Her lies had been exposed in detail, and the evidence against her was overwhelming. She was left with no choice but to accept the judge's orders, and she retreated into herself, bitter and defeated. I stayed strong, focused on rebuilding my life and helping my children heal. From the chaos, the house is now under my name, and I've worked hard to restore some semblance of normalcy. I've cut out toxic influences, stayed close to friends and family, and committed to being the best father I can be. The pain of betrayal is still there, but I've learned to live with it. I've learned that honesty, integrity, and standing up for yourself are the only ways to survive when everything feels like it's falling apart. Looking back, I realize how much I've grown through this ordeal. I trusted someone I loved with everything, only to have that trust shattered. But I also learned that sometimes you have to fight for your life, your dignity, and your family, no matter how hard it gets. I hope my story serves as a reminder. Don't ignore the signs, don't let betrayal slide, and never underestimate the power of standing your ground. Because in the end, truth and integrity are what truly matter.